All right, this is a quick example of where I would use that step out of. I'm going to launch my program, hit the magic button again. And I'll step over this. And now here's a method call. Notice the get instance. That's a method call. Find view ID is probably a method call. If you accidentally, instead of step over, do a step into, now you're in here. And if you do another step into, it may do other weird things. I'm not sure. I don't know where it went. It's thinking about going somewhere. So here's where I want to do a step out to get back to my program. And I might have to step out a couple of levels to get to where I need to go.
It's a 4-step.
It's thinking. Oops, thank you.
Step out.
There. So if you step in, like I did there, now I can step over, and there's an add method, right? It's thinking really hard.
Do the 4-step into.
Nah, I don't need to. This one, Reen did a little research. It's still goofy. Sure thinking hard about that. Yeah, it's stuck.
Just try the 4-step in to see if it goes. Pretty sure. Well, that's weird. Stuck.
So be careful. Remember my note said this is the most commonly used one. If it gets stuck like it seems to be right now, I can try a step out. Kind of went through it. If it really gets jammed up, just stop it, start over again, and be a little more careful. Step into you should only be using if you want to see the program go from your main activity or someplace into a sub-method of your own. It's the only time you should be doing that. Occasionally walking through a program doesn't get you to the problem. Because of the actions, think of some of our we haven't done a whole lot of gestures yet, but long press events, and later on you'll do swipes and things, and in the middle of the swipe things happen. You don't want to put a breakpoint in a swipe because you're not done swiping. You don't get the effect of the swipe, and you can't see, using debugging techniques, you can't see what's going on. But what you can do is use the log file. And as we saw, at least in this version, it's in the Android monitor. In your version, somebody got the current version up. I think there's another tab up here, right? That says logcat. Yes?
It was on the Android. Yeah.
Yeah, it's out here someplace, right? Well, in this one it is, but if you haven't updated your Visual Android Studio, it sits up here. And there's a logcat up here, and you can look inside. Now, this has been here for quite a while, and if you cause an error, you can see it in here, but it kind of gets lost in the shuffle. So I'm going to cause an error by changing my value b to 0. If I try to mod by 0, that's the same as dividing by 0, and I should get an error. I take all my breakpoints out, stop it if it's still running. It is. And I'm just going to run it, because this logcat is going to be updated regardless of whether I run or in debug mode. The only time you need debug mode is when you want to use my breakpoints, your breakpoints, and your step-throughs. And you need to go to debug mode. For these other techniques, running is just fine. So I'm going to run. Okay, I'm going to hit press me. Ever seen one of those before? Once or twice. And then what? Well, then you get to look through all this fun stuff over here and try to figure out what's wrong. It's a little cluttered. What Wenderlich in his tutorials recommends is that you filter this. Right now, it's in verbose mode. And my window's too small. This is the debug level here. Make that a little bigger. There it is, the log level. What Wenderlich recommends is, who needs all this stuff? I mean, who knows who's even writing these things? Who needs them? Change this to error level. That will remove, these are in priority. This shows everything, almost everything, a little bit less than almost everything, and so on. And this shows just errors. And now I can see a little bit better about what's going on because I don't have all that noise in there. And the amount of noise that's in here is really kind of low. If you have pretty complex programs with all kinds of stuff going on, all kinds of objects, this really gets lost. But if you set the log level to error, you'll only see errors. And the first thing I can do by looking just a little bit is I got to divide by 0 error. Oh. And if I look a little bit lower, it tells me that the error was caused in calc mod line 78. Here's where the line numbers came in handy. That line caused the problem. Oh, well, where did that come from? Line 65. There's my call. Now, if I don't quite know what the problem is okay, to me, that's getting pretty helpful. It's a divide by 0 error, and this one is a divide by 0 error, which is easy for me to understand. Some of the other errors, the error message doesn't help a whole lot. But these are line numbers, and you can click to jump to them. Those line numbers will help you figure out this is the line that caused the problem. And then you can go back to debugging techniques and say, well, what value is in B? It must be 0 because I got to divide by 0 error. How did it get a 0? Duh. Oh, I wanted to make A 0. And so that from Wenderlich was already very helpful. But sometimes it isn't good enough. You see where the errors are, but you can't tell what's causing the problem. So I'm going to put this back and show you how to insert your own messages. And you can put them wherever you want. Okay. And my notes tell you how to do that, and it hasn't really changed much. This is optional, so I'm going to skip it for today, but you can create a constant called tag. You can name it whatever you want. It's just a constant. And put whatever tag you want to put. Now, when I was practicing this at home, I made a mistake, and I could do the same thing here. Notice that a lot of my project name contains the word Volker. So that could be causing trouble. Here it is again. And if I search for just Volker, these are actually going to filter, and they're going to show up anyways, even though I don't want them to. So the tag should be something fairly unique that shouldn't be embedded inside your project name, shouldn't show up inside your website name, should just be something a little more less likely to show up in the error messages. You can define a constant for it, or you can embed it immediately inside the log print line command. You can put these wherever you want in your program. Every time the program hits it, it'll print whatever you tell it to print. And it'll mark it with this tag, and then we can search for that tag and filter out everything else. So let's put one in here. Let's say here it was log dot println. First thing we need to tell it is where do you want it in my log debug file. Got to put that in. It doesn't seem to make a lot of difference. Then the tag. So I'm going to use a tag of xvolker. Don't expect that to show up anywhere. Put your kid's name in there, your dog's name in there. You can put MSTC, that's a good idea. You can put MSTC in there. I believe the tags are case, or the filter is case insensitive, so it doesn't quite matter. And then whatever message you want, including calculations or whatever, modulus value is, and in here you can put any Java command, so you could format them if you wanted to, not going that far. C. Whenever I run my program, it hits that line, it will put the message down here in the log cat. And if I'm running my program, I might have 3 or 4 of these, and it might say, you got here, you got here, you got here, you got here. Here's your value so far. And I know what I expect it to see, what I expect to see. And if I don't see it, then I can try to figure out why it didn't get to that other logcat file. You can leave these in your program. They're only of value while you are in the development environment. The problem with leaving them all in is after a while your own filters don't clear much out, though you could put different tags on different things. So let's run this now. And first of all, I'm going to go back to verbose mode. I think debug mode is probably fine. I'm going to go to debug mode, and I'm going to say run. I'm going to press this, and I got my answer. Everything's cool. If you look down at the bottom of my logcat, there's my MSTC tag, and there's the message that I sent to myself. If you want to just show these, go into the search box here and type MSTC, and it trashes all the rest of it, probably even in verbose mode. And you can see just your messages. It's a little, I'm going to say it's a little more advanced debugging technique. Yeah, I don't use a whole lot of logcats, print line, a log file, unless my debugging fails.
It's real helpful if you're threading.
And if you're doing multiple threads, that could be fine. Which thread started, which one ended. A little later, we'll be in the class. We'll take a look at the program states. Your program could go to sleep. Your program could be in the background. Your program could be shut down, and you can put logcats in to show those things so that they can show in debug mode, or not in debug mode, but in development mode, and see what's going on. What many programmers do and what many advanced programs do is actually create a text file of the log so that while your program's running, it's constantly writing to this text file. And so if your program crashes, the text file, which is external to your program, is still available. And if it crashes, it senses it, and many of those programs will then send the log file out to some developer in California someplace who will study it. Sounds like a great job. Here's a logcat file with probably millions of entries. Figure out what's wrong. Questions about log? I have updated the assignment. I ask you to put one in a relatively reasonable spot just to prove that you can do it. Another technique you can do is use the toast command. Actually, it's a class. The toast class brings pop-up message, hence the name. Pop-up messages up on the screen, but they're a little different than the message box in Visual Studio. There aren't all kinds of parameters so that you can have titles and icons and things. If you want titles and icons and things, then you have to use a dialog control. I think that's in a later chapter. But toast can be good for trying to figure out what your program is doing without having to filter the logcat, without having to put breakpoints in necessarily. So I want to show it to you. It does occasionally come in handy a little later for sending messages to the user, because the toast does display a message just like a message box that the user sees. We want to make text. Where do we want this to display? In this context, in this being this activity. And down here I'm getting some help. Okay, I'm on the context right now. Then I'm going to need a character sequence or some string resource, probably a character sequence, which is a string. Okay, so comma. And let's just say processing complete. And then one more piece, I need to provide a duration. How long do I want this to display? You can put any number you want in there. I think it's milliseconds. I don't usually do that because Toast has built into it some constants, length long and length short. Length short is just a blip, and it's gone. Length long is maybe 5 seconds or so, and if you want to, you can experiment with those. Here's a very common mistake. It'd be interesting to see what this does. No errors. Perfect. Run it. Click the button and see the message. No. Where is it? It didn't. In my notes, it tells you this, and if you hover on this line, Toast created but not shown. Did you forget to call show? Of course, nice, thank you. You have to show it just like a message box. You have to implement that show method. So this is just information on what kind of message do you want that's embedded in the make text, and then you still have to show it. Very common mistake. I probably made it 100,000 times myself. All the rest of that looks complicated enough to not have to show. It's going to show up down here. And then it automatically goes away.
Looking Toast.
Unlike Toast. Of course, my wife steals my Toast, so maybe kind of like Toast. Okay. So that's Toast. That can be used for debugging as well. You can throw it in spots and make it pop up and tell you what's going on. It's automatically going to go away. If you put 1, 2, what if I had 3 Toast messages in here? 1, 2, 3, all of them is long text. What do they pop up on top of each other? No, in sequence. Okay, Reen was talking about threading. I have different processes running. These toasts, I believe, go off into a different thread, and they go into this queue. And who was called first? This one. Show that one. It's long text. Wait 5 seconds, goes away. Now who's next? Next one comes up. Next one comes up. So you can actually watch them in sequence in the order that they're coming. If you've got a whole bunch of them, my advice is do the log cats because they'll stay on the screen.
You can show that by just repeatedly pressing the button.
Yeah, I probably could. And it'll just pop up, go away, pop up, go away, pop up, go away. It keeps track of all. It puts them up there when it's ready to go.
There you go. I'll be there for a while.
You can see they just barely go away and they come back again. You can kind of see them dim just slightly. That's annoying.
He'll be there. There you go.
Okay. Questions about Toast? Okay, well, I'm going to take just a quick pause here because I think that's the end of my debugging notes. There's Toast. And let's make this a different recording so it doesn't get overlapped. So let me stop the recording.